So, hi, I thought I'm going to react to some popular fantasy tropes, question mark, okay, question mark. I found this website, about 21 popular fantasy tropes, and since I'm a writer, I thought I'd react to them. Nobody asked for this, it's just for me, and if you find this entertaining to have on in the background, that is completely fine. Okay, so this is the website up there if you want to go and look at it for yourself by this person, Robert Lee. I'm not going to even try the last name. I don't know what 28 is. I'm assuming it's the date that it was published, but I don't know the month this year, 2023. So the first one is an ancient or medieval setting. I have definitely written stories taking place with a medieval setting. It says, when many people think fantasy settings, they think of a time when people had to ride animals or travel on foot. In other words, they think of settings that don't have trains, planes, automobiles, or jet skis, yachts, space shuttles, etc. Most of the time, in fact, people picture medieval Europe with lords, ladies, castles, and dragons because, of course, they existed back then. Okay, so as I said, I'm definitely, I don't know if I say guilty, but I've written stories taking place in medieval times. I did try to avoid it for a long time to see if I could write stories that didn't take place in medieval times, but a lot of stories are inspired by medieval times. I don't know what it is about medieval times that are so aesthetically pleasing. I guess it's aesthetically pleasing. Yeah, so I don't think there's a problem to use it. I think there is too much of it. Any story taking place in any story of a fantasy, recently, especially all these royalty, princess, prince, kings, fae, dragons, elves, a lot of them take place in a medieval setting. And there's nothing wrong with it, there's just a lot of it. And I don't know, maybe it's time we kind of move away from medieval settings, but then what other settings do you use, right? There's nothing wrong with it, it's just a trope. Anyway. Next one is taverns. It says, this is written on the website, by the way. I'm just reading what is on the website right here. Okay, taverns. Related to the ancient settings and the fact that fantasies tend to involve a lot of travel, taverns are a common trope in fantasy stories. Taverns that offer room, board, and possibly entertainment, and mysterious new characters and plot twists. So, I don't know how popular this is right now, actually. I remember seeing a lot of it in like the book series, The Unicorns of Valinor had taverns where characters would meet up with reunite with friends or allies or meet enemies, get attacked. I seen it in Song of the Lioness by Tamora Pierce. Alana meeting her like friend soldier people or whatever in taverns, stopping at taverns, definitely used in Shannon Hale's Books of Bayern series, and definitely seen a lot of taverns popping up in books, sort of older, like early maybe 2000s, late 1990s published books. Not I don't know if there are any of those in recent books. Actually, I haven't been reading a lot of books with royalty, princess, prince people in them, where usually taverns seem to pop up. There might be quite a few. I think there was this book. I haven't read it yet. I can't remember. I think it was called like Lattes and Monsters or something like that, and extremely popular, apparently, taking place in a tavern or something, or a bar or something like that. And so there you go. There's a tavern story. What do I think about them? I don't have. No, wait. I have inns. I don't have taverns. I have inns. The ins and outs of inns. And I don't know if I have any taverns. I don't typically write stories with characters that can drink. So that's why taverns might not come up in my stories, at least. What do I think of this trope? There's nothing wrong with it. I think a tavern is a good place to have things going on. You know, when a tavern comes up, things are going to happen. So at least it's sort of, I guess, consistent, or like it answers to the reader's expectations, you know? So there's that. Next one. Why is it not moving? Come on, move. It's not moving. Okay, there we go. I guess I have to move my mouse around. So the next one is a good versus evil. Okay, this is an extremely popular trope. Like, it's like, this is like the trope of all tropes. It's not like, you're not going to get a book that doesn't have a little bit of this. Oh, shoot. Doesn't have a little bit of this in it. I just hit my mouse on the keyboard and it decided to click. So that's what happened. The good versus evil. Now, I'm going to read. A common fantasy trope that is beginning to change is to have morality tales in which the story pits a pure good side against a pure evil side. Of course, the characters caught in the middle, who are usually the ones readers care the most about, are different shades of both. Okay, so this last sentence here, they're talking about gray characters, gray protagonists, main characters, or what have you. They're the characters that you don't know if they're good. They do some good deeds, but they also do some suspiciously morally bad deeds, and you're not sure if you really like them, but there's something about them that's very intriguing. Personally, I like writing characters that are great characters. So yeah, the common fantasy trope. They say it's a common fantasy trope that is beginning to change. I think there's always been great characters. It's not like it's beginning to change. I think great character itself could be a trope. Good versus evil should be, like, in my opinion anyway, that polarizing, good hero against the evil villain, that is a fantasy trope. And then the great character aspect of it would be a subtrope, or like a separate trope. I am not speaking. Separate trope. Try saying separate trope 3 times in a row. I don't think you're going to get it either. So that's what I think of the good versus evil. I mean, all my stories have a good versus evil in some capacity. Great characters, though. Mostly great characters. The first time I ever wrote a long-form fantasy novel, I say long-form, but it was 40K, and I was like, oh, I wrote 40K words, oh my gosh, this is such a novel. But no, I can definitely write 90K to 100K right now. That was like, what, 10, 20 years ago? Oh my gosh, I feel old. So, yeah, the first book I ever wrote, long-form fantasy novel, had a great character in it, and I didn't know what great characters were at the time, but I was writing a great character. And then at some point down the line, somebody pointed out that one of my characters is a great character. I'm like, great character? Like, what's that? And I kind of like the idea of not having an actual good guy and an actual bad guy. I like the idea of this sort of exploring someone who has some morally good sort of side to them, and then but they do some sort of shifty deeds, but it's for a good purpose. So you're not really sure what to think of them. They could be your friend, but they could also be your enemy. They could be the protagonist's enemy. They could also be their friend at times, and I really like exploring that. Next one, and it's not moving again. Let's see. Okay, there we go. The evil wizard, witch, or sorcerer. Okay, we're going down the evil route for these guys. This is the fourth one. I don't know if the numbers have anything to do with anything. Going to read. Many fantasy stories incorporate elements of magic, so it only makes sense in a story of good versus evil that there be an evil practitioner of magic. Yes, usually forbidden magic, who uses it to cause chaos and gain power. Okay, so an evil wizard, witch, or sorcerer. Many fantasy stories incorporate elements of magic. That is true. Definitely, if a fantasy stories, can fantasy stories go without magic? Go without magic appearing in the story? I think yes. Well, to some extent. Fantasy stories can go without getting into the magic aspect of the world too much. And I can say that because I read Perdido Street Station by China Mieville. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm not sure. And that story has an element of magic in it, but we don't go really deep into the magic. There's this I don't know, I can't remember the name of the species, but it's like a frog species, and they can manipulate water somehow and make it into like a gelatin kind of form and create like what are those called? Like not golems, but they can create like things like creatures that they control and use to do any sort of deeds or anything. And they're just living in this city called New Crobazon. Not sure if I'm saying that right either. Anyway, the book didn't really go too much into the magic. It was clear that they had some kind of water element power, but it didn't really go deep into the magic, and the magic wasn't even a big part of the story. So but I would still consider that a kind of urban dystopian fantasy story. So maybe, yes, there can be fantasy stories that, what was I going to say? There can be fantasy stories that don't have elements of magic in it. Maybe. What do you guys think? Do fantasy stories have to have magic in it to be a fantasy story, or can there be a fantasy story that doesn't have magic in it and it's still called a fantasy story? Let me know. Anyway, and then it reads. The screen cap reads, so it only makes sense in a story of good versus evil that there would be evil practitioner of magic. I don't think in a story of good versus evil, for a fantasy story, there has to be an evil practitioner of magic, usually forbidden magic. I think there can be a fantasy story with magic in it, in which the evil person or whatever doesn't have magic. I mean, it would make an interesting story if there was like a magical protagonist, right? But their other side person, the opponent, the evil guy, doesn't have any magic, and maybe that's why he's frustrated or unsatisfied or evil or whatever, and he wants this magic for himself, but he's not able to obtain magic in the way that everyone else can. That could be an interesting story. Anyway, take that idea if you like. It's free to use. So I don't think in a story of good versus evil that there be an evil practitioner of magic. Definitely. I know he's not saying, this Robert Lee guy isn't saying that there has to be. He's not saying that. I'm putting words into his mouth at this point. He's not saying that has to be, but what I'm saying is I'm just saying that it doesn't have to be. Because if you read this and you're a newbie and you don't know what tropes are, and you want to write some trope or something like that, to know that it doesn't have to, like in a fantasy story with magic, the evil opponent doesn't have to be an evil practitioner of magic. They could even be a good practitioner. Imagine they're just jealous or something. I don't really know. Anyway, next one. There we go. See? A nice picture this time. A really bright picture of, I don't know what kind of flower this is. It's a blue sky picture with a tree with white flowers. Okay. So this next one, and the reason I chose this bright picture is because this is about the opposite side, the good wizard, witch, or sorcerer. What it says is, the counterbalance to evil is good, right? So it's very common to counter an evil magic maker with a good magic maker. And don't be surprised if you find out the two once studied together or that one was once the apprentice of the other. Okay, well, okay, so this is like if, let's see, like Dumbledore and Harry Potter, and Harry Potter turns out to be evil or something like that. I mean, that's not a very good example, but you get what I'm saying. It's like the master and the apprentice, and they're like together, and then the apprentice goes off to be evil. Isn't that kind of like, that's not really magic, but Star Wars? It's not really magic. The Force, I think people will be angry if I said the Force is magic, but uh it's kind of like that. There was a master and then there was the pupil in, what was his name? Kylo Ren? Was that his name? And then something bad happens. He goes against Luke Skywalker or something like that. If you haven't watched the movie, I'm sorry, this might be a little bit of a spoiler. I don't really know. I did watch the movies. So the counterbalance to evil is good, yes. So it's very common to counter an evil magic maker with a good magic maker. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like if you have a story where the focus is the good magic maker, maybe the other side is the evil magic maker. It's very common. Yeah, I think it's very common. Like popular one. I just brought it up. Harry Potter and Voldemort. Good magic maker, evil magic maker. It's not. But don't be surprised if you find out the two once studied together. The one was once a princess of the other. Well, Harry Potter and Voldemort are in completely different time eras, from completely different eras. So that doesn't say that. But I think there have been stories like this where the two once studied together, and some kind of one side felt some like, oh, I'm not good enough to be the teacher's favorite, and so I'm jealous, I'm going to become evil and then turn everyone against the good guy and try to bring him down. Or the Prince of Eris is, oh, like the master thinks he's so good and I'm not good enough, so I'm gonna go on some evil, greedy chaos rampage and bring him down, or whatever. I watched a movie that was kind of like that. I think it wasn't Apprentice in story. It was the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I think was kind of, there was some aspect of the story that was like that. Not the main character and the main master guy, but like their former apprentice or former student or something along those lines. And anyway, that happened. Okay, so I have this really cute picture of a seal, because why not? It's number 6, The Chosen One. It says, one of the most common tropes in fantasy is the one where the readers learn that there is a quote unquote, is that the right phrase? Quote, double quotation, chosen person, usually from a prophecy or vision, who will either unite the word. Oh, wait, I found a typo. It should be either unite the world, word, unite the word. We can unite the word too. Or destroy it, or both. This chosen one could be anyone, but it's almost always the person who seems least assuming in the beginning of the tale. I disagree a little bit here. Did anyone really think Harry Potter was not the chosen one at the beginning of the tale? I mean, I haven't actually read the books. Yay, I have not read the books. I've only watched the movies. I just couldn't get into the books. I don't know what it was. Anyway, did no one think that Harry Potter wasn't the chosen one? Who seems least assuming in the beginning of the tale. I don't think anyone thought that, what was his name, Dudley, was the chosen one, right? Like, he's not even magical. So I don't think almost always. Okay, he's saying almost always, so it's not always, but almost always, the least assuming. I think no one is surprised when they find out that the main character is the chosen one, because it's the main character, for goodness sakes. Usually you feel like that they are chosen for some purpose, especially if there's like some prophecy going on in the background. I mean, it's hard to think that the person is not a chosen one, right? So it has to be, right? The chosen one. Yeah. So it also says that who will either unite the word or destroy it or both. You know that's supposed to be world and not word, right? The chosen person can unite the world or destroy it or both. How do you unite it and destroy it at the same time? I don't understand that. Maybe if they're talking about like a series of books, because I don't think you can unite the world and then destroy it in the same book. Or could you? Could that be an idea? Could a chosen person be like, oh, I'm going to unite the world. And oh, actually, I don't like it, so I'm going to destroy it. Could that be a story? I don't know. The most common tropes, yeah, chosen one is one of the most common tropes, along with the good versus evil. It's pretty common. Readers learn that there's a chosen person, usually from prophecy or vision. Yeah, prophecy, like I said, the prophecy or vision. You can have a prophecy inside a vision, even, and you can have a vision of a prophecy. Anyway, I don't really have much to say about the chosen one. I have used the chosen one trope, definitely, because it's the main character. Something's going to happen to the main character. It's their story, so it's going to be kind of chosen. But has there ever been a story where there's like not a chosen one? Well, actually, I did do a little bit of a twist on the chosen one. Like the main character is made to believe that she is the one that has to do the thing. And there's no doubt. No one else even doubts this. And some people even tell her that it has to be you because they also believe that she is the one to do this thing that would save people. And so then she goes off thinking that, okay, it has to be me. And then things don't turn out the way that she expected and that everyone else expected, and then her world crumbles. It's that kind of story. Anyway, yeah, the chosen one, you can definitely use the chosen one again in a different twist. Like they aren't the chosen one, they think they're the chosen one, but actually a side character is the chosen one. And this is actually an idea that who was it? What was her name? That one that Murphy Napier, is that how you say her name? Murphy Napier said in one of her Dear Author series or something like that. Yeah, Dear Author series, where she takes a topic and discusses with other readers about what they want or not want on a certain topic. And one of them was like the chosen one, I think. And she mentioned an idea that I thought was really good. Just Murphy Napier's idea, not mine, about if there is a group of people, everyone thinks this main character is the chosen one, and the main character even thinks they're the chosen one, but it's actually the side character who is picking up the pieces along the way, turns out to be the chosen one, or the point of view is actually from a side character who is supporting a chosen one, and sort of being in the back of everything and having to pick up all the pieces. I thought, that's an interesting way to look at a chosen one story. I hope somebody writes that because I would definitely read it. So, an idea from Murphy Napier. You can thank her, not me. Okay, this is not moving again. Next one is, there's 21, and I need to get through these, seriously. Reluctant Hero. Okay. Fantasies are often littered with men, women, and other creatures who don't consider themselves heroes and will often go out of their way to explain why they don't have the right stuff to be one. Nevertheless, many of them end up rising to the occasion, if not the first or 30th time, at the time that matters most. Okay, so there's a thing about a reluctant hero. You can write a reluctant hero that is super, super, super whiny and is just a pain to read. I know this might be a controversial opinion for some people, but I think Shadow and Bone, I can't even remember her name. Alina? What was her name? She is so whiny. She's like, I hate my life. I hate what's going on. Everything is I hate, I whine. Oh my gosh, Mal, blah, and all this stuff. I just couldn't take it. Her, like, talk about a whiny hero. It's like, if you're supposed to be the hero, at least maybe in the beginning. Okay, it's fine in the beginning if you're like, oh my god, what's happening to me? Whiny in the beginning. But then you sort of come into your own and sort of like, okay, I'm in this situation. Let me make the best of it. I mean, that is a hero that I would want to cheer on. I really did not care what happened to her. I actually hoped that she would perish at some point, but by the end she doesn't, and she prevails as the hero, and she's still kind of whining and reluctant and hiding and everything about it. I don't really know what's going on with her. Anyway, I actually wanted the story taking place in the point of view of the Darkling. That would have been a more interesting story, because he's a gray character, or he turns into one, and I thought that was, his story is really interesting. It's just her. It's just the main character. Oh my gosh. Anyway, rant over. Reluctant hero fantasies are often littered with men and women and other creatures who don't consider themselves heroes and go out of their way to explain why they don't have the right stuff. I mean, that sounds like a whiny character to me. Like, he's describing a whiny hero, and I do not want another whiny hero like the girl of Shadow and Bone. I just don't want to see that anymore. But, okay, I have a reluctant hero. It's not clear in the story that he will be a hero in the beginning. And in fact, the way he's reluctant is not that he's whiny about it. He just doesn't care in the beginning. He's just like, what do you mean a magical gem wants to be my friend? I don't want to be. I just want to go on and steal stuff from people because that's what I like to do. I'm like a kleptomaniac or something. Is that a kleptomaniac? Is a kleptomaniac the person who can't help but steal things? I can't remember. But anyway, he has this problem that he just sort of takes things from people and sells them. And he's just a reluctant hero in that he's sort of getting these sort of meditation advice from this like bird witch person. And the only reason he's doing that is because he does have some magic in him and it needs to be controlled, and he doesn't want to use it. He's just not interested. He just wants to live his life as a street performer and stealing stuff. That's all he wants to do. And so when this sort of hero opportunity comes around, he's like, why do I need to care? And the story is about how he slowly learns about what's going on around him, the bigger picture of the world, and then he starts becoming friends with the people around him that are trying to make him this hero figure, and he starts to maybe care a little bit more. The actions that he takes reflect that he cares about it. So he begins as a reluctant hero. He's not a reluctant hero for the majority of the story. That would be painful to read. Please, don't do that. Seriously. At times that matters most. I mean, even at not times that matters most. I mean, you can see a gradual change. I want to see a gradual change in this Shadow and Bone girl. I want to see it. Apparently, the Netflix shows were a lot better than the books, so maybe it's better if you watch that instead of reading the books. I don't know. That's on you. You have to decide that for yourself. Okay, that was a doozy. Doozy? I never even use that word. Why am I saying that? Okay, this one is in all caps. Yeah, this one. Reluctant Hero was in the quest. This is in all caps. The quest. And I have this nice sort of questy looking mountains hiker photo. These are all stock photos, by the way. Let me read. Fantasy novels are often based around one big quest. Well, yeah, maybe. Okay. Anyway, let's get on. The quest may take different forms. Save a captive person, find treasure, slay a dragon, battle an army, etc. But the quest is often the reason people in a fantasy get moving in the first place. Does it often always have to be a quest? No, I don't think it always has to be a quest. Many books are not quests. Quest is a big thing. I think a quest means there is a goal that must be achieved, like slay a dragon or save a captive person. Do some big thing, but I don't think fantasy novels are often based around one big quest. I think they used to be based around a lot. Like if you look at some kind of not old, but like, not recent fantasy books, it's not really about a big, not recent meaning, I mean to say that fantasy books from like 10, 20 years ago might have been more questy. I think they were more questy, like defeat the evil, or whatever. That's the end goal. You defeat the evil and that's the end of the book or the series. Like in, I read, Unicorns of Valinor. I can't actually remember what the goal of that story was. I can't remember. I only remember that I really, really loved that series, and I wish that there was another book after the 8th book or the 7th book, and there never was. And because I felt like it ended on a sort of cliffhanger, like what is going to happen now? And then that ended, and I don't even know what the goal of that story was. But like a quest is like you're going on an adventure, aren't you? Is a quest always about adventure? I don't know. To slay a dragon, battle an army. I don't think novels are often based around one big quest. At least not recently. A lot of it is like, oh, can this prince and princess get married? Is that an end goal quest? I don't really know. Anyway, do I have any quest stories? Yeah, maybe. I actually do. Actually, the story that I'm editing right now, hopefully for publication this year. I don't really know what's going to happen, but it is a quest story, and it's a quest story because I like the OG quest stories. I like the sort of, the goal is clear, and you get to the end, and it's like, wow, this is the ending! Yay! And then after you close the book, you're like, oh, that was such a good book, I like those sort of questy stories. And right now, there's not a lot of questy stories out there. A lot of them are like some scheming prince and princess, royalty, duke and duchess, fae, elves, dragon, people, things. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just like quest stories. So I'm writing a quest story, obviously. And I didn't realize that it was a quest story until later on when I dissected what I was writing. Anyway, so yeah, I am writing a story where it's based around one big quest, which is the one where I twist the chosen one. The quest is often the reason people in a fantasy get moving in the first place. Yeah, I would say that. I pretty much agree with these statements. And it's not moving again. Come on. Side quests. Yes, of course, while the questers are questing. Okay. I see what you did there, Robert Lee Brewer, whatever. Of course, while the questers are questing, it's possible that they'll find they have to do some side questing, sometimes to help with the main quest, but sometimes for other reasons. The main quest may be to slay a dragon, but then a side quest may be to get a special weapon that could help slay the dragon. Yeah, side quest. I don't know if this is like a common fantasy trope, popular fantasy trope. It's just kind of necessary. Like if you have a big quest, there's definitely some other things that you need to do to get there. I don't think it's like, I think it comes with writing about a quest, that it's not just a straight line from the beginning of the story to the end goal. It's like you're doing other things along the way, and that's what makes the story interesting. You might even have setbacks for your character, or you might even have like long side quests. Like, have you ever read the Iliad or something, one of those like gaudy, Greek gaudy ones. There were like months, years of side quests. It's insane. Anyway, the Iliad, I can't remember the name. I'm not a classic reader, so I don't even know. Aeneid. That's the one I wanted to remember. The Aeneid. Aeneid. I don't really know how to say it even. But that one, they had these like games, and those were like side quests, and they're like years of side quests, years. And it was insane. I'm like, what are you doing? I thought you wanted to get to that sort of place to like see your father in hell or something like that. But here you are, spending years doing this game and this side quest and meeting this queen and everything. It's like, what are you doing? Just get on with it. That's what I was thinking. Anyway, side quest, I think it comes with the quest. I don't think it's a separate trope. That's my idea. I don't think you can have a quest without side quest. That's just what I'm saying. Okay, that was quick. The ancient and powerful artifacts. Oh my gosh, I do like these. I was doing so much talking. I don't really talk this much, so it's a lot. Ancient artifacts could be a special sword that the greatest heroes of legend use in battle, or a legendary wand that amplifies magic in ways that sorcerers could only dream. Or books that have magic or other special knowledge. Speaking of which, don't forget, I don't know what that, there was nothing else under this number 10 part. There's just this speaking of which, don't forget, I don't really know what's going on here. Ancient artifacts could be used in could be a special sword in the greatest heroes of legend in battle, or a legendary one that amplifies magic ways. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, I like ancient artifacts. I have ancient artifacts in all my stories. That's that. I like ancient artifacts. I think ancient artifacts are cool, and ancient artifacts can naturally happen because there is history and there are artifacts, and some of them are ancient and some of them are magical. So yeah, I really don't have anything else to say about this. It's a popular trope. I think it's a nice trope. I like it. Libraries filled with books. Oh my gosh, I do not have. No, I don't have any of this. Knowledge is power, but there are few places where this is true more than in fantasy fiction. As such, libraries are special places, whether they're institutional libraries or personal libraries, for those privileged enough to have one. Mass-produced books often don't exist in fantasy, so each book is a special tool that can be used for good or evil. Yeah, knowledge is power. Okay, I can bring up Perdido Street Station by China Mieville, because there is a bird species called the Garuda that has a library in the sky or something. I don't really know. It was like a flying library or floating library or something like that, and it has like all curated knowledge from the land. And the Garuda species are like a bird species, so they fly, and then they can access this knowledge in the sky, and it's like a popular library that scholars of other species are also interested in getting their hands on because it's like very rare and popular or something like that. And I thought, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, libraries are filled with books. Knowledge is power. Yeah, knowledge is power. Is this a popular fantasy trope? I don't know. Is it? I don't know if I see a lot of books in fantasy stories nowadays. I think there used to be a lot more like spell books and stuff like that. Harry Potter, right? They have spell books, but are those some like forbidden texts introduced in there? Not really. Definitely seen books like these knowledge is power kind of books appear more in like horror. But I haven't seen, I don't know, none of the books that I've been reading recently, fantasy books, have libraries in them. They might have libraries, but they don't have like the library as one of the tropes. I don't know. Do we need to have more books with libraries in them? I mean, wait, I think they had libraries in the Shadow and Bone book. They definitely had a book. I don't know if they had, well, maybe they did have libraries. The problem with libraries is that it becomes like a world info dump. It becomes an info dump, and you don't want to do info dump in fantasy because it can be boring and just telly, and then you just lose the reader. Can you tell that my voice is getting tired? Let's move on. What do I think about library field books? Maybe we should have them more in, but you have to be careful not to be info dumping with them. Fantastical creatures. Okay. By the way, don't forget the importance of fantastical creatures in fantasies. Some of the creatures may be good, others bad, and many unaffiliated, though they serve their own purposes to move the story along. I, which is Robert Lee Brewerjan, mentioned dragons, but there are also elves, dwarves, trolls, goblins, giant spiders, orcs, and that's just if you're in Tolkien's Middle Earth. Are there giant spiders in Tolkien's Middle Earth? I can only think of Harry Potter when I think of giant spiders. Anyway, fantastical creatures, definitely. I don't have any books. Well, I do have some stories. I have some stories with human characters, but most of my stories main characters are fantastical creatures. I just don't really like writing humans. I'd rather write a feline character. I have a bipedal feline character as my main character in my current editing story. Okay, so I am all for this trope. All for this trope. Popular fantasy trope. It's fun to create your own. You can bring in like centaurs or whatever, goblins, whatever you want. But it is fun to create your own fantasy creature. And though that might be intimidating for some, the way that you can do it is really take a bit of a creature here, take another bit of a creature there, and sort of mash them together and kind of see what you can come up with. You can have a bird with a cat body or what have you. You can really do whatever you want. You can have the creature that maybe you drew as a child as your fantasy creature, I came up with this species called sand sheep, which are sheep that graze in the desert, and they're kind of like camels. They store water in their bodies like camels do. Sand sheep. That's one. That's just sheep, but they're living in a different environment that they might not normally be living in on Earth. You could even do something like that. You could have fish that walk on land. Whatever you want. Really, fantasy creatures, whatever you want. Anything works as long as you can, do something cool with them. Not as long as you can use. You can have mosquitoes with fire blazing eyes or something. I don't really know. But fantastical creatures is definitely something that would be fun if you're a newbie writer to explore. And I quite like it when there are fantastical creatures in stories. It's unique. It's original. It's not like, oh, elves and dwarves again. It's something different. And I like something different. I like unique things. Okay, there was this guy on a surfboard or something going like, what a nice ocean day or whatever. Picture in the background. I chose this one because it's like training moments. Number 13 is training moments. Okay, whether it's a farmer learning how to wield a sword or a farmer learning how to practice magic. Seriously, farmers, that's what it says. It says seriously, farmers. A common fantasy trope is to show how a person goes from being inexperienced to the greatest warrior or sorcerer of all time ever. That means there have to be training moments. There has to be, I think. Have to be training moments when they fail and flail about and say, I'm never going to be able to do this. Though, of course, they will. Okay, there was some talk on Murphy Napier's channel. I don't know if it was about training. I don't know if it was apprentice or magic. I don't know what it was. It might have been about the chosen one. But that a protagonist who has never picked up a sword picks up a sword and they are immediately a master. And that was in her channel, Murphy Napier's channel. She said that many readers said that doesn't make sense. They don't like it, and so on and so forth. So yeah, if you're able to show it realistically, I think that is great. I wrote a story, not the one I'm writing right now, but I have a story where there is a girl from our world. It's a portal fantasy. She ends up in this fantasy land, and she finds out that she's actually from that place, born there, but she has no memory of that place. And what happens is that she ends up getting into this battle, and so she has to learn to fight, but there is really no time for her to train. So she ends up just completely failing in the battle and not being able to do anything to help people, or doing very little. It's mostly the people around her who are sort of helping her out. And I wanted to write a story with a character like that because I wanted to explore something a little more realistic of these training moments. Like, she has a little bit, but it's not even remotely enough. And she's able to hold a sword, but the sword is so heavy that she swings it around, and she actually becomes a danger to other people that are on her side. So, and then they're like, well, maybe you shouldn't hold that sword or something. And they end up doing the fighting for her. So she's not a damsel in distress. She's not a reluctant, well, she's kind of a reluctant hero. She's not a damsel in distress. She is strong. She can talk to the evil people and try to manipulate them. She can hold her own, but she needs help with fighting because there was not enough time to train her, understandably. And she's like, I'm never going to be able to do this. That is that. That's fine. She can do other things, and so I think if I like it, I would like it if they portrayed it realistically, because you're not going to become a master of something in one day or something. Like, if you can portray it maybe over the course of a year, and I know that's long, but if you want to have a character that knows nothing about wielding swords and magic, maybe you need to write it more realistically. Come on. I mean, with Harry Potter, it's understandable that he is able to wield some magic because he's going to a school to learn how to wield magic. It makes sense. And if he is able to fly, there was a scene in the movie where he's riding the broom for the first time, and then he flies off, which is good, but he ends up falling because, maybe, yes, his magic is quite strong, but he's not able to do things right away. And it makes sense. Make it make sense. That's all I'm asking. I don't know why this guy is bringing up farmers learning how to wear, and I mean, I guess they're taking the chosen one trope and playing into this, but anyway. Training moments are a popular fantasy trope. It's not a popular fantasy trope. I think it's a necessary fantasy trope because, of course, you need that training moment. You can say months went by and she struggled, but she prevailed. At least have a little bit of time passage might be nice. In a way. I'm not saying that there can't be prodigies of magic, you can do something right away, but even prodigies need to practice and learn how to control whatever power that they have, right? It's not like they're immediately going to know how to do this stuff. Next, antagonist turned ally. One fun trope in fantasy is to have someone who was an antagonist, usually a lower or mid-tier antagonist, become an ally, either to save their skin or because they've been wronged by a higher-tier antagonist. Revenge as a motivator. These characters are fun because readers don't know if they can be trusted and for how long. Antagonist turned ally. Okay, so have someone who's an antagonist, usually a lower mid-tier antagonist, become an ally to save their skin because they were wronged by a higher-tier antagonist. I've seen this in Perdido Street Station, and I quite like that character, but then what they did to him is you need to read Perdido Street Station to understand the devastating feeling of what they did to that character. Anyway. Antagonist turned ally. Yeah, that's an interesting, I won't say it's a popular fantasy trope, but it has happened. That's like the friends to enemies, enemies to, not friends to enemies, enemies to friends or enemies to lovers trope. It's very similar to that. It's the antagonist turned ally. Yeah. I don't have anything to say. I don't really have, I have the, an enemies to friends trope in one of my stories because I wanted to explore enemies to friends. I have another enemies to friends trope in another story because I wanted to explore it again, but now a little more clearer that they're enemies. And then I had the enemy of the enemy becoming like an enemy to ally, so antagonist. I'm not really antagonist, but like a nuisance turned ally, more like. His characters are fun because viewers don't know if they can be trusted. Yeah, I think an antagonist turned ally is a fun trope, fun thing to explore, fun thing to read about. Like, you wonder what made them change their mind, and that's kind of fun to figure out and see. And then how, if after the battle, they still are friendly or an ally to the protagonist. That is fun to read about. Like, I've only watched the movies of Lord of the Rings, but Gimli and Legolas are good example of an antagonist turned ally. They are historically antagonists to each other, and they become like the best of friends. And that is just they are the best duo. I mean, come on. Okay. Wow, darkness. Okay, I chose a dark picture for this one because it's about hidden truth or inheritance. This trope can go a few different ways and can connect with the earlier chosen one trope. One possibility is that there is a secret heir to the throne of a kingdom. That heir may or may not realize they are the heir. Or there may be a character who is supposed to inherit a fortune or special powers. Or there's a secret prophecy or bloodline that is revealed that changes everything, or at least some things. Okay. Yeah. They say it can connect to the earlier chosen one trope. It definitely can. It's actually, I think, a subcategory of a chosen one trope. Hidden truth or inheritance. This is a very popular thing. I have this one. I've read, let's see, what was it? The Stormkeeper's Island trilogy by Catherine Doyle, which definitely plays into the hidden truth or inheritance trope. Very well done. I mean, you need to, it's a middle grade series, but the Stormkeeper's Island trilogy by Catherine Doyle. You guys need to read it. It was great. Love that author. Anyway, yeah, the hidden truth or inheritance, definitely. Wasn't there a book called The Inheritance even? Hidden truth definitely comes up a lot. You know, it could be a hidden truth to the main character, or the main character hides a secret, and it's a secret that is hidden to everyone else, but that would play into the story and the plot later on in a big way. Yeah, so the last one, there's a secret prophecy or bloodline that is revealed that changes everything, or at least some things, yeah. Definitely a hidden truth or inheritance in the Warriors mega series by Aaron Hunter. And did you know that Aaron Hunter isn't one author? It's like a bunch of authors. Did you know that? Did you know that? You should look up Aaron Hunter on Wikipedia and see the whole long list of authors that belong to this name. It's crazy. I thought Aaron Hunter was one person for a long time. Anyway, that series has hidden truth or inheritance like sprinkled out throughout the entire series, and I didn't even read the entire series. I got down to Jay Feather, and I just could not stand his perspective. Like, I know he's supposed to be a grumpy character, but I just couldn't take it anymore. And the series was just going on for so long, and I was losing interest. I like the first series from Rusty to Firestar. That's around my favorite parts, where Firestar is still a young leader. That's my favorite part. Anyway, hidden truth or inheritance, yeah, popular, I would say that, popular of a chosen one subtrope kind of situation. Okay, so the next one is Damsels in Distress. I think I already mentioned Damsels in Distress at some point. I don't know what this picture is and why I chose it. Maybe because it's pink. This trope is starting to fade away, but it was popular to make female characters helpless captives who need to be saved. More fantasy stories are turning this trope on its head and making male characters the captives, if there are even captives in the first place. Okay, the damsels in distress trope is, I think, fading away because females and women are saying, like, hey, we are strong people. Don't make us look like we're pathetic. And so they're like, we are not like, oh, save me, dear prince. No, we can do things on our own. And I think, actually Shrek, the princess, what's her name in Shrek was like, I can save myself kind of situation girl, right? And then more and more, more and more princesses of like Disney started coming up with I can do this myself, like the Princess and the Frog. Tiana, was that her name? And Moana, of course, is another one. Like, I can choose my own path. I can go across the ocean if I want to, and people don't have to save me. They can support me. I don't need to be saved. Rapunzel was another one that's like, I don't need to be, I mean, she kind of had to be saved, but she's pretty strong. She can hold her own and fight. And a lot of more of those were coming out. And I think damsel in distress stories are written a lot by male authors. I don't want to say definitely because I don't know, but a lot of that is because, oh, the guy wants to save the girl, and guys want to save girls, I guess. I don't know. Speaking of damsel stress makes me think of, I've sometimes watched these gameplays of Mario and stuff like that, and he has to save Princess Peach and that kind of thing. And apparently the movie is a little bit different because she's not really a damsel in distress. She's also fighting. I don't really know. I didn't watch the movie, but I saw a little bit of the trailer and it looked like she was about to go to war herself. Anyway, yeah, this trope is starting to fade away. I think it can continue to fade away. Or if there is a damsel in distress, to at least maybe she's in distress, but she's not helpless. And helpless captives. She's just continuing to fight to escape and that sort of thing. And that was seen a little bit in Rapunzel, I think. I think there should be more female if there are any captives that they should be able to at least think on their own. They're not like waiting for a prince to come and save them. Yeah. More fantasy stories are turning this trope on its head and making male characters as captives. What fantasy stories? I don't know if I've seen. What are we talking about? Are there captives? Any captives? I don't know. I actually don't know because I haven't been reading a lot of those royalty fantasy stories because they're just not. I just don't like them anymore. I can't think of any that are like that. So maybe you guys can let me know. If anyone is watching this, I hope you are watching this far. Come on, it's number 16. We're almost there. 5 more. Okay. Orphan hero. So many fantasy stories have a main protagonist who is an orphan or learns they were orphaned or thinks they were orphaned. There are few things more vulnerable than an orphan, there are few things more vulnerable than an orphan. What does that mean? Which is probably why so many readers rally around characters who overcome their orphanhood into greatness. Of course, orphans are usually the most likely person to be named the chosen one. Yeah, like Harry Potter, right? Main protagonist is an orphan. Actually, my main protagonist is what kind of an orphan? She was abandoned as a child, but she was adopted, so she's not an orphan anymore. Yeah, and the thing about characters overcoming orphanhood into greatness, I don't think you don't overcome orphanhood into greatness. That is like a weird phrasing to me personally. Almost saying that being an orphan is bad, and you have to overcome orphanhood. I don't think that's a good phrase to have. Rally around characters who overcome their orphanhood. As if saying orphanhood is a bad, sad, poor little orphan. I don't think orphans want to be seen as sad, poor little orphans because they're not always sad, poor little orphans. Orphans can be great too. maybe there should like into greatness. Like orphans can be great just as being, or you don't overcome orphanhood into greatness. It's not like when you become great that you're no longer an orphan. You know what I'm saying? I have some a little bit issues with this phrasing, but that is just my opinion. People who are orphans should tell me if they have problems with this sentence. There are few things more vulnerable than an orphan. I don't really know what that means. Which is probably why so many readers rally around characters who overcome their orphanhood into greatness. Overcome their orphanhood into greatness. That is a weird phrasing to me. I get what he's saying. I think he should say overcome their hardships and prevail or something. Could have been a better phrasing. That's just my opinion, okay? That's just my opinion. I'm not like saying that this writer is a bad writer. I get what he's saying. But it could be it could have been phrased a little bit different way. That's all I'm saying. Orphan hero, definitely a popular one. I mean, Harry Potter he's an orphan. He's an orphan. And so, when he becomes great. He becomes great, but he's still an orphan. You know what I'm saying? Okay. If you're adopted, are you no longer an orphan? Orphan means that you don't have a family, but you can have a found family. Are you still an orphan if you have a found family? That is something to think about, maybe. I don't know. Okay, 18, best ever. What is this? Let's see. Let's read together. Whether protagonist or antagonist, fantasy fiction is filled with hyperbole. Characters prove themselves to be the best warrior ever, the most evil warlock ever, the strongest sorcerer ever, the greatest horse rider ever, the best archer, the most amazing blacksmith, the most fearless ship captain, etc. I'm getting a headache reading this. Fantasy fiction often buys into the best ever trope. No. I like a character that has flaws. This is like saying that fantasy fiction is filled with hyperbole. It's like saying fantasy fiction is filled with characters who don't have flaws. I don't think that is true. If a character doesn't have flaws, why would you want to cheer them on? I mean, I think what he's saying is that there are tropes where at the end of the story, they are the best at something. I don't really know what this trope is. Is this even a trope? Popular fantasy tropes for writers, best ever? I don't really know if I see this as anything particularly. The most evil warlock, that isn't true if they get defeated. The strongest sorcerer ever, you can have a strong sorcerer, but they're not the strongest sorcerer ever. I mean, even in the Stormkeeper's Island by Catherine Doyle, there is a evil sorceress that appears, but it's not like she's the most evil ever. It's what timeline or time era, time situation encompasses as ever? I don't know. The strongest sorcerer ever, greatest horse rider ever. I don't know. Greatest horse rider. Is there a story with the greatest horse rider ever? I don't even know if I can think of one. Best archer. You can have a guy that maybe in that land is considered one of the best archers in the land, but the best, the only one. And maybe it plays into the chosen one. Maybe that's where he's going. He's sort of going off of some subtropes that he's seen in chosen ones, but often buys into the best ever trope. I don't think so. I really don't really understand this one, best ever. What is he trying to say? Robert Lee, could you please elaborate with examples what you mean by best ever? And I don't mean with examples like the most evil warlock. I mean with examples from actual fantasy fiction books or movies. Best ever is I don't think even Harry Potter became the best ever sorcerer like that. I think fans would agree that he's not the best ever. There are all kinds of little other things playing into him. I'm making hand gestures behind the screen and you can't see it. So yeah, I don't think that there is a best ever trope, or I don't even understand what this is. Anyway, we're moving on. I spent too much time trying to dissect something I don't understand. And there are eagles in the background in this photo for some reason. Okay, there is a picture of a black person being like, oh dear, all hope is lost. And that is a trope. All hope is lost. This is not restricted to fantasy fiction, but it's a common trope for a fantasy story to hit a moment or moments where all hope is lost. Everyone's going to die. They're not going to make it out, etc. But then, this isn't a trope. This is not a trope. What is this? This is just like a, what do they call it? Like a, action point or something. It's like the, not the inciting incident, but you know what I'm talking about. It's like the moment where everything is lost and everything goes down, and then you're like, it's the moment like right before the character prevails, and then it's like the chosen one comes up top or whatever, and then the climax happens. This is like right before the climax, and like goes downhill. It's just like a action beat. Isn't that what it's called? The action beat or the scene beat or the beat of the story or something like that. All hope is lost. It's not restricted to it's not a trope. I don't think it's a trope for a fantasy story to hit a moment. It's not a trope. It's just an action beat. It's just the how to tell a story. Remember in Finding Nemo, where Marlin and Dory are stuck inside the whale, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we can't do anything. What is going on?" And all hope, it feels like, is lost. Like they are stuck inside the whale's mouth. Or when, let's see, what was it? Rapunzel is like back with her mother and chained up. I think she gets chained up, and it's like it's like she knows the truth, but now her supposed Mother Gothel has captured her, and she can do anything to save Flynn. What's his name? Flynn. All hope is lost. It's just a popular action beat. It's not a trope. In my opinion, it's not a trope. In my opinion, it's not a trope. I think maybe Robert Lee was told to write 21 popular fantasy tropes for writers, and he's stuck with 21, so now he has to like, milk things and find things. I don't really know the situation, but maybe, I don't think, in my opinion, all hope is lost is not a trope. It's just like something that you do in story writing. You can take any other story and there is like an all hope is lost moment. So, I don't think it's a trope. Okay. The cavalry arrives. Oh, yeah. This is not a trope either, I don't think. And the cavalry could be an actual cavalry, or a small band of warriors, or a wizard, or whatever other interesting person or thing that breathes new life into the protagonist as they realize, not today. Lord of the Rings definitely had moments where like, oh my gosh, we can't go against these whole big number of orcs or enemies. And then help arrives, with like the white wizard Gandalf and as the leader, and he like comes down the mountain, and they're like, the hill, he comes down the hill, and they're like, light is shining, and the orcs are like, brightness, we don't like brightness, or whatever it is. Cavalry arrives, the battle at Hogwarts, I think, there was like this moment where like the others, like students, like come out from this tunnel, and they're like, oh yay, we're going to fight too, and you know, and it's like when all moment is lost, it's like this is where help comes. And that's just, I think, an action beat. I don't think it's particularly a trope. I don't think it just happens in fantasy either. It doesn't happen. No, I don't think it has happened. It doesn't just happen in fantasy. People coming together to support like this cause. It's not a particularly unique thing to fantasy. I don't think. Can I give an example? Let me think. I can't think of an example that is not fantasy, because fantasy is mostly what I read. Not today kind of thing. I can think that maybe it's not just fantasy. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, so I'm just breathe new life into the protagonist as they realize not today. I think the protagonist is not just realizing not today, but like they're like, oh, hope is lost, and then help comes, and they're like, my friends are here, just help me save the land, and they're like, oh, not today. That's kind of like where this is coming from, I think. I don't think it's a fantasy trope. Just saying. Okay. Last one, guys. This is a heck of a long video. I don't even know how much time has gone by because this screen recording situation doesn't show me how much time has gone by. Okay. Last one is price for winning. I have this gorgeous mountain in the background with snow on top. This is another popular fantasy trope. The protagonists may win, but there is a price for winning. They become extremely weakened, they sacrifice their future plans and or their life. The character may win, everyone may be happy, but there was a price to be paid by the protagonist, and they knew and chose to pay that price for everyone else. I don't think this is a fantasy trope either. I think the last few was like grappling for straws. Is that how you say? Is that the phrase? I don't know. So this is a popular fantasy trope. Yes, the protagonist may win. I said yes. I'm saying yes in the fact that I don't agree with that it's a popular fantasy trope. Yes, you're saying that, but I don't think it is. It's just a thing that people do sometimes. And there's a sacrifice. There is some sacrifice. There is some sacrifice in fantasy, yes, but I think there is some sacrifice in other stories too. Like I read this story called Sadie by Courtney Summers, and I think that there were moments where there were some big sacrifices made by the main protagonist, and she knew what might happen to her, but she still, went on with it, knowing that there was a potential that she could achieve her goal. And this was a fiction, mystery, thriller type of story. It wasn't a fantasy story. There are no elements of fantasy in it. But Sadie by Courtney Summers, great book. Great book. Oh my gosh, the ending was just so shocking and great. You guys need to read it if you're interested and you're of a white young adult age to do that. So, price for winning, no, I don't think it's particularly a fantasy trope or popular fantasy trope. It might be a popular trope, like in general, in general fiction, it might be just a popular trope or just a popular gimmick, maybe. Maybe it's a gimmick. I don't really know. But price for winning, a sacrifice, yeah. I don't think you have to have a sacrifice, They become I don't think the protagonist has to be the one that has a sacrifice. Other people might have to have the sacrifice. It doesn't have to be the main protagonist. And, in Harry Potter, I think his, friends had more of a sacrifice thing going on for them than, I wouldn't say then he did, but his friends definitely had some sacrifice stuff. Some sort of more devastating sacrifice stuff going on. If you look at, I don't know, I can't think anymore. Yeah, Stormkeeper's Island, bringing that up again, but there are some sacrifices made, sort of, and it wasn't with the protagonist. So this number 21 saying this is another popular fantasy trope is just trying to say that this is another popular fantasy trope. I don't think it's a particular other popular fantasy trope. Now, if you want an actual popular fantasy trope, maybe you could have the magical objects, not ancient artifacts, but current objects, which happen to be magical, like a magic wand, or a magic stone, or a magic mirror, or a magic cloak, blanket, I don't know, stuffed animal. Maybe in recent years, who knows? There may be magical technology, but does that get into sci-fi? I don't know. Magic beanstalk. There could be things like that, Price for winning, yeah. There could be, I don't know, price for winning is just a weird thing to call it a fantasy trope. I think maybe if you need another trope, maybe a magical object, or like the magical object is a pretty popular fantasy trope, I would say. Not just ancient artifacts. It doesn't have to be ancient for it to be magical. Just saying. Another thing you might be able to add, I don't know. This doesn't really. Animal sidekicks? Is that just Disney? That might just be Disney and Pixar and so forth. But, yeah. So, 21. We got through them all. I don't have an ending slide. I didn't make that. Which trope is your favorite? Which trope do you remember the most? Let's see. Let's go back for a second here about, let's see, I wanted to say about the quest, like if you have any books, current books published since 2020, which are quest books, I would like if you could tell me if there are any. And if in a chosen one tale that you have seen some twists on the typical chosen person tale, if you could recommend some books like that, that would be great. Yeah, gray characters. What do you think about gray characters? Do you think it's a popular fantasy trope, or do you think that it is a subtrope of like the good versus evil? Not exactly popular, but maybe gray characters are pretty popular. Who knows? We don't know. So you could tell me. Tell me what was that? Lattes and goblins, or lattes and monsters, or something like that. Lattes and orcs. I can't remember what the title was. Okay, but there was a tavern story, and it's pretty popular. Have you read that book? What do you think? I haven't read it. Maybe you can tell me if you would recommend it to people. Like, is it a 5-star book, or is it a 4-star book, or is it like, it's 3-star, you can read it, it's okay, kind of book. And yeah, ancient or medieval setting. Have you come across any fantasy stories that are not in an ancient or medieval setting, or not even inspired by an ancient medieval setting? Because that's the tricky thing here, is that the royalties people are usually inspired by an ancient or medieval setting. So, are there any fantasy books that are not in an ancient or medieval setting? Okay, so those are the questions that I have for you. I had another question some time ago. I can't even remember what it was. Oh yes, libraries. Are there any books, any books that have featuring magical libraries, or libraries are a big part of the story? I know there's a story called The Midnight Library, and I don't know if that's considered fantasy, but I'm not particularly interested in that book. Let me just say that, for various reasons. Maybe I'll make a video about books that are popular, but I'm not interested in reading. Who knows if anyone would care about that. Anyway, fantasy creatures, training moments. Yes, definitely have more realistic training moments in fantasy fiction. Would love to see that. Antagonist turning ally, hidden truth or inheritance. Popular thing. Damsels in distress. Do not bring this back. Or if you do a better job than like saying women are pathetic and can't save themselves and need a man in their life. No. And it's not just women anyway. We have a diverse spectrum of people in this world, okay? Orphan hero. Tell me, people who are orphans, or people who know people who are orphans, or whatever, whoever you are, overcome their orphanhood into greatness. Tell me if this makes sense to you, and if it doesn't make sense to you, tell me why it doesn't make sense to you. I am curious, because it doesn't make sense to me. Now it doesn't move. Okay. Best ever. Tell me if you understand what the heck this is. I'm going to pause here for a second so you can read this for yourself if you haven't already. Tell me if you understand what this is. I think he's just grappling for straws at this point. By number 18, I think he's like he felt like he milked everything out, and there are no more popular fantasy tropes writers. No, but I don't. I think he's like. Anyway, that was my thought. That's just my opinion. My opinion. It might not be the case. Maybe someone told him to write this, and he's kind of stuck with it now. Who knows? Tell me if this makes sense to you. It doesn't to me. All hope is lost. This is not a fantasy trope. Cavalry arrives. I don't think this is a fantasy trope either. It's a popular thing that happens in fantasy, but it's not a fantasy trope. Price for winning. I don't think this is a fantasy trope either. This is just a general, in fiction, this is what happens kind of thing. You know, it can happen. I mean, you don't have to have a sacrifice, but maybe there is some sacrifice. So that's it for that. I need to stop the screen recording. I don't know how to do it. How do I do it? Okay. Stop. I will see you later. I don't know what screen this is recording right now, but if you see this thing, this is just my screen recording thing. If you don't, pretend you didn't hear about that, and I will see you in another video, maybe reacting to more fantasy tropes, or maybe reacting to book covers, because I make book covers, not professionally, but for a hobby. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. If you have any thoughts, do we want to add to this? Feel free to comment, and that's it. Goodbye, I guess. And, I don't know. Should I try to find some things to say? And I used to say, see you later, alligator, in old videos, but I don't think I'm that kind of person right now. Maybe I will say, tell me about your favorite fantasy trope and why it is your favorite fantasy trope. That's all. See you later.